For the first time in years, it felt like we could finally breathe. After countless surgeries, endless physical therapy sessions, and those terrifying late-night emergency runs to the hospital, our daughter Nora, our bright, brave, 10-year-old who uses a wheelchair, was finally finding her rhythm in life. She lived with a rare genetic condition that made everyday movement a constant challenge, but it never dimmed her spirit. Her laughter still rang through the house like wind chimes. Her colorful sketches covered the fridge, and her endless curiosity turned every dinner into a story time, full of questions about the stars, dinosaurs, and what aliens might eat for breakfast. My wife Tara and I had sacrificed so much to get her here. We drained our savings, moved halfway across the state, and downsized everything, except our hopes. This new community, quiet and suburban, felt like the safe haven we'd been searching for. A place to rebuild, to give Nora a fresh start. I'd just landed a stable IT job downtown. Tara had finally started the vegetable garden she'd always dreamed of, and Nora was attending a nearby therapy center that specialized in her condition. For once, life felt normal, even joyful. Then Martha Kingsley introduced herself. She showed up at our door one afternoon with a tray of muffins and a clipboard, neighborhood charm wrapped in a veneer of formality that immediately put me on edge. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA, and the moment she smiled, something about her felt off. It wasn't just the polite but calculating way she looked at me. It was the way she looked at Nora, like she was silently assessing her, measuring her worth against some invisible standard. Still, we were new. We didn't want to make waves. We smiled, thanked her for the muffins, and welcomed her into our home. But after that day, her presence began to grow, like ivy slowly wrapping itself around every part of our lives. First, it was a notice about the wheelchair ramp violating community aesthetics. Then came complaints about Nora's specialized medical van clashing with neighborhood uniformity. Then, a carefully worded suggestion that perhaps the therapy dog Nora had been waiting for wouldn't be ideal for the community. It all came under the guise of HOA policy, but the message was clear. We weren't welcome. Despite the tension, we pressed forward. Nora had made a friend across the street, Emily, a kind-hearted girl who pushed Nora's chair through the park trails and shared her obsession with space documentaries. Watching them together made every sacrifice worth it. The late nights, the debt, the move, it all felt like it had led us somewhere beautiful. But that illusion shattered one spring morning. Tara stepped outside to grab the newspaper and froze. Nora's wheelchair was tipped on its side in the front yard. It was like something out of a nightmare. No scream. No warning. Just silence. The eerie, gut-wrenching silence of a child who should have been safe inside, and wasn't. The front door had been left unlocked. The cameras on our porch had mysteriously gone dark for 20 minutes. And Nora, our entire world, was gone. In that moment, the air left my lungs. Tara dropped to her knees and screamed Nora's name until her voice cracked. I ran from room to room, shouting, praying, begging for a sign this wasn't real. But it was. In the blink of an eye, our perfect life had been ripped apart. And somewhere deep in my gut, even before the investigation began, I knew this wasn't random. This wasn't some stranger off the street. Someone had planned this. Someone who had been watching. And everything in me pointed to one name, Martha Kingsley. The police arrived within minutes. Sirens cut through the quiet morning. Officers taped off our yard, questioned neighbors, and requested access to the few private security cameras scattered around the street. Tara sat on the porch steps, rocking back and forth, whispering Nora's name like it was the only thing tethering her to this earth. I stood beside the police chief, heart pounding, as they reviewed a blurry clip from a neighbor's camera. There it was, grainy, but unmistakable. Nora, in her own wheelchair, being pushed down the sidewalk. A tall woman, face hidden behind a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, rolled her into the back of a black SUV. No plates visible. No sound. Just 24 seconds of footage that confirmed the worst. She had been taken. But then I saw it, a flash of metal as the SUV turned. A license plate, barely legible. Ho 1. My breath caught in my throat. That was Martha Kingsley's vanity plate. She'd mentioned it once at a neighborhood barbecue, calling it the badge of order with a proud smile. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to believe it. Even after all the harassment, even after her cold stares, I couldn't wrap my mind around the idea that she'd actually take Nora. But every instinct in me screamed that she had. I told the officers what I saw. They nodded, took notes, and said they'd look into it. Hours passed. Then a detective returned, stone-faced. Martha had already been questioned. Her alibi? She'd been presiding over an HOA board meeting that morning, complete with signed minutes, witness statements, and surveillance footage from the community center showing her there during the exact time Nora vanished. Case closed, at least for them. But not for me. We knew she had resources. Connections. She'd been HOA president for 7 years, backed by a loyal, hand-picked board. It wouldn't be hard for her to fake attendance records or edit footage. And the HOA clubhouse was only a 5-minute drive from our house. Plenty of time to slip away and return unnoticed. Still, the police seemed eager to believe her. One officer even muttered under his breath, "You sure you're not just emotional, sir?" These kinds of cases usually involve a custody dispute or a runaway. I wanted to punch him. Our neighbors, those same people who had smiled at us just a week earlier, now avoided our eyes. They closed their blinds when we passed. They shrugged when we knocked, claiming they didn't know anything. But I saw the guilt in their faces. The fear. Some of them knew something. They just didn't want to say it. Maybe they were scared of Martha. Maybe they owed her. Or maybe they just didn't care enough to get involved. That evening, I drove to Martha's house. Her pristine colonial glowed under soft porch lights. The lawn was manicured, untouched by anything as messy as human suffering. She opened the door herself. Perfect hair, polished nails, that same smirk. "Joel," she greeted, her voice like silk over barbed wire. What a surprise. I didn't wait. "Where is Nora?" Her smile didn't falter. "Excuse me? Don't play dumb." I saw the plate. "Ho one. That's your car." "Well," she said coolly, stepping forward slightly, her perfume sickly sweet, "I'm flattered you remember my license plate. But I think your grief is clouding your judgment. You should be with your wife, not throwing baseless accusations at your neighbors." "You're not my neighbor," I growled. "You're a parasite." Her face twitched just for a second, like a mask cracking. Then the smile returned, colder this time. "Careful, Joel. I understand you're upset, but slander has consequences." I turned and walked away before I did something I'd regret. But as I reached the sidewalk, I heard her voice float after me. "Some of us are trying to preserve this community. You just don't seem to understand how things work here." That night, I barely slept. Every noise outside made me jump. Tara stayed curled in Nora's bed, clutching her pillow like it could bring her back. I sat in the garage, staring at the van we used to take Nora to her appointments. I couldn't get the image of her out of my head. Her wide eyes, her gentle smile, her small hands always reaching for mine. And now she was out there, alone, scared, in the hands of someone who didn't see her as a child, not as a human being, but as a tool. The worst part wasn't even the silence. It was the feeling that everyone around us had already decided to move on. Like our daughter's disappearance was just another item in the HOA newsletter. And Martha? She hadn't even broken stride. Still attending events. Still sending out passive-aggressive emails about lawn heights and garbage compliance. But she had made a mistake. She thought we were weak. That grief would make us fold. What she didn't realize was that when you take a parent's child, you don't destroy them. You turn them into a weapon. And I was just getting started. The days that followed Nora's disappearance blurred into a haze of dead ends, cold stares, and helpless rage. The police closed the active investigation after a week, classifying it as a possible runaway with special circumstances. That phrase alone made my blood boil. Nora couldn't even walk across the house without assistance, let alone vanish on her own. But it didn't matter what we knew to be true. Martha Kingsley had an alibi. The community accepted it. The law accepted it. Everyone just wanted to move on. But I couldn't. Tara tried to stay strong, but I saw her unraveling. She spent hours combing through social media forums, missing persons pages, hoping for a sighting, a clue, anything. I spent my nights driving every back road within 50 miles of our neighborhood, convinced I'd see a glimpse of Nora's chair, her blanket, even a shoe. But every night ended the same: empty roads and a silent phone. Then strange things began to happen. My email accounts were locked. My car's license was flagged for unpaid fines I'd never received. Our HOA fees mysteriously tripled. And when I protested, I received an official notice threatening a lien on our home. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just grief. This was war. Quiet, coordinated, completely invisible to anyone who wasn't being targeted. Martha was tightening the screws, and she wanted me broken. So I started digging. I pulled every public HOA record I could access: meeting notes, vendor contracts, budgets. And that's when I noticed something strange. Thousands of dollars being funneled monthly to companies that didn't seem to exist. Landscaping firms with no online footprint. Maintenance companies with no employees. All signed off by Martha and rubber-stamped by a silent board. Then I remembered something. 2 weeks before Nora disappeared, I'd accidentally been CC'd on an internal email thread from the HOA board. It mentioned a vendor audit and a potential whistleblower issue. At the time, I thought it was just another HOA snafu. But now it all made sense. It was me, the whistleblower, the one who sent that email. They thought I knew too much. And now, Nora was gone. After she disappeared, I started seeing things, connections no one else seemed to notice. I found the name of a contractor who was supposedly hired by the HOA to inspect our building's foundation. When I called him, he had no idea what I was talking about. He'd never even been to our development. His signature had been forged. That was the first real crack in the facade. Then there was a former resident, now living in another city, who reached out quietly. He told me he'd left after Martha made his life unbearable, ever since he filed a complaint about misuse of funds by the board. She doesn't ruin you with a sword, he said. She kills you with 1,000 needles. And I was bleeding from every single one. After that, we installed new cameras. Tara started sleeping with the lights on. Every time we stepped outside, it felt like we were being watched. The place we once believed would be a safe haven for our daughter now felt like a prison, built not with bricks, but with paperwork, money, and quiet manipulation. Neighbors began crossing the street to avoid us. One family, whose little girl used to play with Nora, moved out overnight. No goodbye, no notice. I never found out if they were afraid or paid to leave. But I wasn't backing down. Not then. Not ever. One night, around midnight, I drove to the community center. It was locked, like always. But I remembered the grounds crew sometimes left the side gate unlatched. I slipped in quietly and shined a flashlight through the basement window. That's when I saw it. Thick cables running from the main fuse box to a sealed door that wasn't on any blueprint. A room that didn't officially exist. And next to it, a keypad that looked too new, too high-tech for routine maintenance. I knew something was down there. And I knew Martha didn't want me to find it. The next morning, I formally requested access to the HOA clubhouse to inspect documents, something every member is legally allowed to do. I submitted it in writing. By afternoon, I got an email denying the request, citing ongoing construction and safety concerns. I forwarded that email to the local police and asked if they could step in. I heard nothing back. That same night, both of our cars had their tires slashed. I checked the porch cameras, newer models now, backed up securely to the cloud. The footage showed a figure in a hoodie, moving fast, face hidden. But something caught my eye. On their wrist, a glint of silver. I froze the frame. Zoomed in. It was a charm bracelet, delicate, polished. The kind Martha wore every single day. Still, I had no concrete proof. Just instincts, fragments, and a growing sense that we were completely alone. But I didn't need permission anymore. Not from the HOA, not from the police, not from anyone in this town. All I needed was one break, one crack in Martha's carefully constructed empire. And I was going to find it, even if it meant tearing the whole neighborhood apart to get there. Because this wasn't just about a homeowners association anymore. This was a hostage situation. I found the next clue by accident. Or maybe it was fate. I was following Linda Rowan, one of Martha's board members, a woman with a sharp voice and eyes that always seemed to be scanning for threats. I saw her pull into the community clubhouse during hours when it was supposed to be closed for renovations. I parked half a block down and watched her disappear behind the building, carrying what looked like a stack of manila folders. Something told me not to wait. I grabbed my flashlight, started recording on my phone, and moved across the lawn after she went inside. The side gate was unlocked, just like before. The clubhouse was silent. The air inside was stale, thick, like it hadn't been touched in weeks. On the surface, everything looked normal. Folding chairs stacked in the corner. Flyers for community events. A faint smell of cleaner. But as I walked toward the back hallway, I noticed a small detail, a strip of tile on the floor that didn't match the rest. It was just in front of a door labeled Storage B. I pushed it open, expecting brooms or old paperwork. Instead, I found an elevator. Small, industrial, brand new. A keycard panel beside it blinked red. I stepped back, heart pounding. Who installs a high-security elevator in a neighborhood clubhouse? I left before Linda came back and returned the next night, this time with bolt cutters, a crowbar, and a deep, quiet dread. I slipped in again, cut the building's power to avoid triggering alarms, and pried the elevator doors open. It took over an hour of straining, but I finally forced them apart and lowered myself down the shaft. One level below, there was a steel door. No keypad. Just a manual lock. I picked it, and what I saw on the other side would stay with me forever. The room was dim, lit by low blue LED strips running along the base of the walls. It looked like a converted bunker. Concrete walls, no windows, thick soundproofing padding every surface. There were 2 twin beds. One was neatly made. The other had a flattened pillow, a soft blanket I recognized immediately. Light purple, covered in cartoon owls. The same one Nora carried everywhere. Next to it sat her favorite stuffed bear.
Torn.
Missing one ear. I froze. My hands began to shake. I whispered her name into the silence. No answer. Then I saw it, a desk in the corner. Her heart monitor, disconnected. And beside it a note in perfect cursive handwriting. Asterisk, she's safe for now. But silence is safer for everyone. Asterisk. I dropped to my knees. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. My heart felt like it might tear through my chest. She had been here. My daughter, maybe days ago, maybe just hours, had been held in this room. And then they moved her again. Always just out of reach. Like bait on a string. I took photos of everything, the room, the bed, the monitor, the note. Every detail. Then I climbed back up and left before I completely broke down.
I didn't sleep that night.
Tara and I sat on the couch, side by side, holding Nora's blanket like it could somehow bring her back. The next morning, I filed a report with the police and handed over everything, photos, the note, the timeline. The detective flipped through it all, asked a few vague questions, then closed the folder. Interesting setup, he said. But without proof your daughter was actually held there, we can't pursue trespassing charges against the HOA. The note could be a prank. Your word? That's circumstantial. Circumstantial. The word hit like a slap. She's 10 years old. She has special needs. She's missing. I found her things, her blanket, her bear, her heart monitor, in a hidden, soundproof room under a building run by the woman I know took her. And you're calling this a prank? He didn't even look up. You've made a lot of noise in this town, Mr. Delaney. People are starting to think you're unstable. Maybe even dangerous. That was the final crack. I walked out without another word. But they'd shown their hand. Martha had power, real power. Not just over the HOA, but over the police, the town, the narrative. Her board members moved like soldiers. The community had been convinced that anyone who challenged her was the threat. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had nothing left to lose. And everything to gain. Later that week, I went back to the clubhouse one last time, under cover of darkness, not to gather evidence, but to leave a message. I taped a copy of the photo, Nora's bed, the heart monitor, the note, right to the front door. Below it, I wrote in permanent marker, "You took the wrong family." The truth started coming together then, like shattered glass, slowly being pieced back into a mirror. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about Nora. Not exactly. She wasn't the real target. She was leverage, a pawn in something much bigger. Something built on money, silence, and control. And it all started with an email I was never supposed to see. 2 months before Nora disappeared, I'd received a spreadsheet by mistake, an internal HOA document showing quarterly budgets, maintenance contracts, landscaping costs, security upgrades that made no sense. I even brought it up at an HOA meeting, half joking, saying one hedge trimming job cost more than a used car. Martha smiled, tight fake, and said, "You wouldn't believe how expensive quality has become these days." Back then, I let it go.
Now, I knew what that smile meant.
That spreadsheet was the key. I dug it out of my email archives and started cross-checking the vendors. Nearly everyone was fake. Shell companies, ghost contractors, and all of them led back to the same bank account, one controlled by Martha.